In the world of gospel music, faith and family often walk hand in hand. But behind the spotlight and the Sunday songs are stories that reveal a deeper, more human side of the legends we love. From powerhouse voices who shaped the sound of worship to pastors who built ministries on love and redemption, many gospel greats have quietly navigated what it means to raise, love, and support LGBTQ plus children and relatives. These are stories of faith meeting truth, of love breaking silence, and of families choosing grace over judgment. In this video, we uncover the untold journeys of 15 gospel legends whose LGBTQ plus children and loved ones have helped them see God's love in new and powerful ways. 1. Robert Stafford's story is one that beautifully bridges two worlds often seen as distant, the sacred and the unapologetically expressive. A gospel singer and musician in his own right, Stafford grew up immersed in the rich tradition of church music, where harmonies were born out of faith and resilience. His life revolved around melodies of devotion, the kind that raised spirits and spoke to the soul. Yet, when his son, Montero Lamar Hill, better known to the world as Lil Nas X, burst onto the scene with the genre-defying hit Old Town Road, Stafford found himself watching a new kind of artist take shape, one who dared to blend gospel roots with the bold rhythms of hip-hop and the unflinching honesty of queer identity. What could have been a clash of generations or beliefs instead became a tender story of acceptance and understanding between a father and a son. In the world of gospel, where faith and tradition often weigh heavily on how people express themselves, Robert Stafford's quiet but powerful support for his son stands out. He didn't issue grand public statements or sit for interviews defending Montero's art. Instead, his love spoke through simple acts, posts on social media, messages of encouragement, and an openness that reflected something deeper than tolerance. It was love without conditions, the kind of love that embodies the gospel message itself. While others debated Lil Nas X's provocative imagery or questioned his relationship with faith, Stafford seemed to understand that his son's journey, as complex and defiant as it was, came from the same place he once sang about, the search for truth, freedom, and divine purpose. Their relationship offers a kind of lesson the church rarely preaches, that faith and family can coexist with difference, that love doesn't have to be filtered through dogma. Stafford's own musical past makes this connection even more meaningful. As someone who sang of redemption and grace, he found himself living those words in real time, learning to hold space for a son who embodied a kind of authenticity that many still fear. In his son's rise, from small-town Georgia to global stardom, he likely saw echoes of his own dreams, the same creative fire that once pushed him toward the mic, but expressed now through a lens of queerness and modernity. 2. Kirk Franklin's story is one of brilliance, struggle, and the complex intersections of faith, fame, and family. As one of the most influential figures in modern gospel, Franklin reshaped the sound of church music, infusing it with hip-hop, R&B, and urban soul. Songs like Stomp, Imagine Me, and Revolution didn't just reach the pews, they reached the streets, blending praise with rhythm and making worship feel raw and real. Behind the awards and applause, however, Kirk's life has also carried deeply human challenges, especially when it comes to his relationship with his son, Kirk Franklin. Their journey has unfolded in the public eye, revealing the pain, misunderstandings, and hope that often sit beneath the surface of family life, even among those who preach about grace. Carrion's decision to speak openly about his sexuality and his strained relationship with his father sparked wide discussion, not only because of Kirk's fame, but because it touched a nerve in the church community. The gospel world, known for its passion but also its conservatism, has long struggled to embrace open conversations about queerness and acceptance. When Kirk identified himself as gay, many expected condemnation or silence. Instead, what emerged was something more layered and real, a father and son both wrestling with identity, forgiveness, and the meaning of love. Franklin, known for his candidness, spoke about the pain and the desire to heal, emphasizing that family doesn't stop being family even when it's broken. Kirk's honesty about the tension with Kirk revealed something beyond celebrity drama. It exposed the raw humanity behind the pulpit. Here was a man celebrated for bringing people to God through music, now faced with the challenge of embodying that same grace at home. For many watching, their story mirrored their own experiences. Faith colliding with difference, love tested by pride, and the search for reconciliation that feels both divine and impossible. Franklin has spoken about therapy, accountability, and growth, showing that even a gospel legend has to wrestle with the hard work of empathy and understanding. 3. Patti LaBelle's story is one of radiant love, timeless music, and fearless authenticity. As a gospel-rooted soul legend, LaBelle's voice has been both a balm and a battle cry, the sound of faith wrapped in passion, defiance, and grace. From her early church days to global fame with hits like You Are My Friend and If Only You Knew, she has carried the essence of gospel, a belief in hope, in healing, and in human connection, into every note she sings. Yet behind her glamorous image and commanding stage presence lies a woman whose heart beats just as loudly for her family and for the LGBTQ+ community that has cherished her for decades. Her relationship with her niece, Alex Holland, a transgender woman, brings that devotion to life in the most personal way possible. Alex Holland's journey has been one of courage, stepping into her truth as a transgender woman while carrying the legacy of a famous and beloved family. For many, this could have created tension or silence, especially in a culture and generation where discussions about gender identity often spark controversy. But Patti LaBelle has never been one to shy away from truth or love. She embraced Alex with the same warmth that has made her a global icon, speaking with pride and compassion about her niece's authenticity. Rather than distance herself, LaBelle used her platform to amplify acceptance, reminding the world that family means standing beside one another no matter what. What makes Patti's support so powerful is that it isn't performative. It's deeply woven into who she is. She has long described herself as the original drag queen, a nod to her flamboyant style, her magnetic stage persona, and her deep connection to the queer community that helped shape her career. From drag shows to pride festivals, LaBelle has been honored and adored as an icon of liberation, someone who, through her voice and presence, gave LGBTQ+ people permission to live loudly and love freely. Her songs about friendship and endurance have become anthems for those who've had to fight to be seen and loved for who they are. For Ray Boltz's journey is one of redemption, truth, and the radical courage to live authentically, even when it meant stepping away from everything he once knew. For decades, Boltz was one of contemporary Christian music's brightest stars. His songs like Thank You, The Anchor Holds, and Watch the Lamb were staples in churches across America, inspiring millions with their heartfelt messages of faith and devotion. To many, he represented the ideal image of a faithful husband, father, and servant of God. But beneath the polished melodies and the gospel spotlight, Ray Boltz was carrying a secret, one that conflicted painfully with the world he lived in. When he came out as gay in 2008, the announcement sent shockwaves through the Christian music community. Yet in that moment, Boltz wasn't just revealing his truth. He was finally finding peace. What made his story even more profound was a compassion that followed within his own family. Boltz had long been a devoted father, raising his children in a faith-centered home. 2 of his daughters would later come out as lesbian, a revelation that deepened his understanding of identity, love, and the struggles faced by LGBTQ+ people of faith. Instead of shame or rejection, what grew between them was mutual acceptance and love, the kind that mirrors the very gospel Boltz had sung about for years. His experience as both a gay man and a father to queer children gave him a unique perspective on the power of empathy, and it shaped his voice into something even more meaningful, a messenger of grace, not judgment. After coming out, Boltz's life took a quieter, yet more authentic turn. He stepped away from the Christian music industry, a space that had once celebrated him but often rejected those like him. Still, he never abandoned his faith. He simply redefined it. He began performing for affirming congregations and LGBTQ+ gatherings, using his music as a bridge between belief and belonging. The same songs that once brought comfort to the devout now offered healing to those who had been cast out. In interviews, Boltz spoke openly about his journey towards self-acceptance, emphasizing that God's love was big enough for everyone, no matter who they loved or how they identified. 5. Daryl Coley's life was a symphony of spirit, struggle, and soul. Known for his extraordinary 5-octave range and his seamless fusion of gospel and jazz, he was more than a singer. He was a vessel of divine emotion. Songs like He's Worthy and When Sunday Comes captured not just technical brilliance, but spiritual depth, the kind that could move listeners to tears. Coley's music was the sound of a man who had walked through both the fire and the anointing, who knew that true worship wasn't about perfection, but about honesty. Behind the spotlight, though, he was also a father, one who faced the same test of love and understanding that many believers do when life's realities stretch the boundaries of faith. His daughter, Lady Coley, proudly lives as an openly lesbian performer, carving her own space in the creative world while honoring her father's influence. In a community where conversations about queerness can still stir discomfort, Daryl's quiet but steady support for his daughter spoke volumes. He didn't make grand declarations or public debates. Instead, his love showed up in the way he nurtured his family, choosing compassion over condemnation. Those who knew him often spoke of his humility, a man whose faith was too deep to be shaken by difference. For Daryl, love wasn't a doctrine to defend, it was a presence to embody. Coley's life was marked by challenges, health issues, personal battles, and moments of uncertainty. But through them all, his faith matured into something tender and inclusive. His understanding of grace became broader, more human. He had experienced brokenness himself, and that vulnerability made him a vessel for empathy. The same voice that soared across choirs and sanctuaries also whispered the truths of a father's heart. That loving one's child fully, without restraint or condition, is perhaps the holiest act of all. Through Lady, he found another way to live out the gospel he sang. Not in church walls or accolades, but in the simple act of affirming his daughter's worth. 6. Twinkie Clark's story is one that blends divine talent, family legacy, and the quiet courage to embrace love in all its forms. As the musical genius behind the legendary Clark sisters, Twinkie shaped the very sound of contemporary gospel, fusing church tradition with a pulse of funk, soul, and jazz. Her compositions, From You Brought the Sunshine to Jesus, is a love song, redefined worship, bringing gospel to charts and into the lives of people who might never have stepped into a sanctuary. Her ability to marry scripture with groove made her not just a trailblazer, but a bridge, one who connected holiness with humanity. Yet beyond the music and the accolades lies a story of family, acceptance, and the kind of love that outlasts doctrine. Her son, Anthony Clark, has carried that same creative fire forward as a musician and producer, and as an openly gay man, he represents a new generation shaped by both faith and freedom. In a world where queerness and gospel have often been cast as opposites, Twinkie's relationship with her son reflects a quiet yet powerful form of grace. She has never been one for loud declarations or public defenses, but those close to her know that love, not judgment, defines her family story. The Clark sisters, celebrated across generations and especially adored within the Black LGBTQ+ community, have long been embraced as gay legends, not because of controversy, but because of connection. Their music, fierce, emotional, and deeply spiritual, has provided refuge for countless queer fans who found in their harmonies both faith and freedom. For Twinkie, that bond between her music and her audience isn't accidental. It's the fruit of a ministry rooted in realness. Her songs were never just about religion. They were about the full spectrum of life: joy, pain, doubt, and deliverance. That authenticity resonates deeply with queer listeners who know what it means to worship through struggle and to love despite rejection. And for Anthony, growing up under the shadow of such greatness, his mother's acceptance gave him permission to be both creative and true to himself. The love between them stands as a testament that family can thrive even when tradition might not understand. 7. Jacky Clark's journey, like that of her sisters, is woven deeply into the rich fabric of gospel history, a story of sound, spirit, and sincerity that has touched generations. As one of the founding members of the Clark sisters, Jacky's soaring soprano helped define the group's unmistakable harmony, that fusion of sanctified church vocals and soulful contemporary flair that forever changed gospel music. Songs like Blessed and Highly Favored and Is My Living in Vain didn't just uplift congregations, they reshaped what it meant to worship through music that felt alive, modern, and deeply emotional. Yet, beyond her musical brilliance, Jacky's legacy carries another kind of power, one grounded in love, acceptance, and quiet strength within a family that has long been intertwined with the stories and souls of LGBTQ+ people. Within the Clark family, queer identity has never been treated as something to erase or shame, but rather as a natural part of the complex beauty that makes up their collective story. Jacky herself has spoken with warmth about family and connection, and while not always in the public eye like her sisters, she has remained a steady, grounding presence, one who models compassion without conditions. Among her relatives are openly gay family members, and rather than turn away, Jacky has continued to love them openly and proudly. In doing so, she reflects a quiet theology, one that says you don't need to choose between God and love, between holiness and humanity. The Clark sisters' legacy has long resonated with the LGBTQ+ community, a testament to the emotional honesty embedded in their music. For decades, their songs are played in church sanctuaries and at drag balls, in choir rehearsals, and queer celebrations alike, proving that the divine can exist wherever there is truth. Jacky's voice, both tender and fierce, has always carried that message. That faith isn't about who you exclude, but about who you uplift. Through her presence in this legendary group, she helped craft a gospel that transcends boundaries, one that belongs to anyone with a heart to believe and a soul to sing. 8. Karen Clark's Sheard story is a portrait of grace, faith, and evolution, a woman whose voice has become synonymous with gospel excellence, yet whose heart has learned to embrace the full, complicated beauty of humanity. As a dynamic lead of the Clark sisters, Karen's breathtaking range and emotional depth have shaped the sound of modern gospel music. Her solo work, including the Grammy-nominated One God, cemented her place as both a powerhouse vocalist and a spiritual leader. But beyond the stage and the pulpit, Karen's journey reflects something even more profound: the ongoing conversation between faith and love, tradition and inclusion within a family and a community that has long meant everything to her. Though she is best known as a mother of fellow gospel artist Kiki Sheard, Karen's broader family connections, including openly LGBTQ+ relatives and a deeply devoted queer fan base, have added layers of meaning to her ministry. In a genre where silence often surrounds queerness, Karen's willingness to perform at inclusive events and to open her music to all audiences speaks volumes. She doesn't grandstand or politicize her faith. Instead, she lets her songs do what gospel does best: heal, unite, and uplift. Her voice, steeped in both conviction and compassion, carries an authenticity that resonates far beyond church walls. Within her family's legacy, a lineage that includes the legendary Clark sisters, each with their own ties to queer loved ones and fans. Karen represents the bridge between old and new understandings of spirituality. She grew up in a church culture where rigid beliefs often drew hard lines around identity, yet her life has quietly reflected the opposite: a love expansive enough to hold everyone. Her performances have drawn both devout believers and queer listeners who find refuge in her sound. Proof that the Spirit moves wherever there is sincerity. That quiet evolution, that widening of the circle, feels like gospel in its truest form. 9. Kirk Carr's story is one of faith refined through honesty, artistry, and love that defies fear. As one of gospel music's most respected composers and choir leaders, Carr's gift has always been his ability to create music that feels both grand and intimate. Anthems like In the Sanctuary, "Oh Magnify the Lord," and "For Every Mountain" have become fixtures in churches worldwide. His music has carried generations through worship, celebration, and hardship. Yet, behind the brilliance of his arrangements and the reverence of his lyrics lies a deeply personal journey, one that speaks to the evolving understanding of family, faith, and acceptance in the gospel world. Carr's son, Kirk Carr Jr., lives openly as a gay man, a truth that has quietly shaped the father's public life in ways that go far beyond music. In a church culture that still wrestles with conversations around sexuality, Carr has navigated this terrain with dignity and tenderness. He has never used his platform to condemn or divide. Instead, he has chosen love as his language. While he may not often speak at length about his family, those who know him recognize that his silence is not rooted in shame, but in protection, a quiet, steady love that values relationship over rhetoric. Through that love, Carr has modeled something rare in the gospel community: how to honor both faith and family without compromise. That balance has not always been easy. Carr's music has long been celebrated by the very institutions that often marginalize LGBTQ+ voices. Yet his own life challenges those contradictions. By standing by his son, he embodies the deeper message that pulses beneath every choir anthem he's ever written: that God's love is vast, unconditional, and undefeated. His songs about perseverance and grace now feel even more intimate when seen through this lens. They are the hymns of a man who understands that true worship begins with truth, and that compassion is the purest form of faith. 10. Marvin Sapp's story is one of triumph, transformation, and the steady rhythm of grace that flows through every note he sings. Known for his soul-stirring anthem Never Would Have Made It, a song that became both a chart-topping hit and a cultural prayer, Sapp has long been one of gospel's most influential voices. His music has carried countless people through grief and renewal, resonating deeply because it comes from lived experience. Behind his ministry, however, is also a story of fatherhood and unconditional love, one that shows how faith can expand rather than restrict, and how true belief is measured not by doctrine, but by compassion. Marvin Sapp's daughter, Madison Sapp, has come into her own as an outspoken lesbian activist, using her voice to advocate for equality and inclusion. Her courage reflects the same strength that defines her father's music, the resolve to stand in truth, even when the world expects silence. For a gospel figure like Sapp, whose life has always been intertwined with the church, this part of his family's story carries special weight. Yet rather than distance himself, he has chosen to lead with empathy, faith, and pride in his children. In interviews, Sapp has spoken about the importance of love and dialogue within families, especially in moments when belief and identity seem to collide. His words, filled with the humility of a man who has walked through storms, remind listeners that parenthood is sacred work, and that acceptance is not a betrayal of faith, but its fulfillment. The relationship between Sapp and his daughter embodies the kind of grace his music preaches. Having endured the loss of his wife and raised his children largely on his own, he understands the fragility of life and the power of love to heal. That experience has deepened his perspective on what it means to live authentically and to love without condition. As Madison's advocacy has grown more visible, Marvin's support, often quiet but unwavering, has stood as a testament to a faith that grows through understanding. His love for his daughter isn't something he hides behind pulpit or lyric. It's something that lives in his example, in his refusal to let difference define distance. 11. Fred Hammond's story is one of musical innovation and spiritual depth, but also a quiet transformation within the heart of a father. For more than 3 decades, Hammond has stood at the forefront of gospel music. His work with commission and solo projects like Pages of Life reshaping the very definition of worship. His sound blended the raw emotion of R&B with the reverence of praise, giving rise to what many call urban gospel. Songs like No Weapon and We're Blessed became anthems of resilience, hope, and faith for believers across the world. Yet behind the voice that inspired millions stand a man who has faced deeply personal moments of growth, learning how to embody the message of grace that he so powerfully sings about. That message took on even greater meaning through Hammond's relationship with his son, Brian Hammond, who came out as transgender. In a community where discussions about gender identity often provoke silence or rejection, Hammond chose a different path, one grounded in understanding and love. As a father, his first instinct was not to debate theology, but to protect the bond between parent and child. Though the gospel world could be slow to embrace such openness, Hammond began to weave themes of compassion and unconditional love into his sermons and conversations. His reflections on grace became more than abstract theology, they became personal. In his willingness to affirm his child, he offered a glimpse of what it looks like when faith evolves in real time, when belief moves from the pulpit to the heart. For Hammond, this journey wasn't about public image or cultural debate, but about living what he preaches. His music has always been rooted in the power of redemption, in God's patience and mercy, and that same spirit now guides his understanding of family. Those who have followed his ministry know that Hammond has endured many seasons, divorce, loss, and reinvention, and through them all, he has remained committed to authenticity. His relationship with Brianne became another chapter in that story of growth. Rather than turning away for what he couldn't yet understand, he leaned in, and in doing so, became a symbol of how faith can stretch without breaking. 12. Tasha Cobbs' Leonard story is one of unshakable faith, boundless voice, and a heart that continues to stretch the borders of gospel music. Known for her electrifying performances and the soul-deep conviction in her worship, she became a defining voice of a new gospel generation. Her breakout song, Break Every Chain, wasn't just a hit. It became an anthem of deliverance, a cry for freedom that echoed in churches, concerts, and hearts across the world. Behind that powerful sound, however, is a woman who has learned to live out the very message she sings. That God's love is wide enough to hold everyone, and that true worship begins when we choose compassion over control. Within Tasha's own family, that truth has taken on intimate meaning. Her niece, who is identified as queer, represents a generation finding the courage to be seen and loved as they are, a reflection of the freedom that Tasha's music so often proclaims. Rather than shrink away from the conversation or align herself with exclusionary rhetoric, Leonard has used her platform to emphasize the power of inclusion in gospel spaces. Her message has been simple yet profound: love people first. Through interviews, live worship, and even the spirit of her songwriting, she reminds listeners that faith without empathy is hollow, and that the church must become a place where every child of God can feel safe to worship. Leonard's advocacy doesn't come from a desire to challenge the church, but from a desire to heal it. Having faced her own battles with depression and self-doubt, she understands what it means to feel unseen in spaces meant to bring comfort. That empathy has shaped not just her ministry, but her character. When she speaks about family, about the ones who make her proud or teach her grace, there's no hesitation or apology, only love. Her relationship with her niece is a quiet reflection of that love. Unconditional, protective, and rooted in faith that transcends fear. 13. Donnie McClurkin's story has always been one of courage, contradiction, and redemption. Known for timeless gospel anthems like Stand and We Fall Down, he has stood at the crossroads of vulnerability and victory for decades. His voice carries a sincerity that feels both raw and refined, shaped by deep faith and the scars of a complex past. Behind his music lies the story of a man who has wrestled with personal identity, pain, and purpose, all while remaining a figure of hope for millions who have faced their own inner battles. His transparency has often made him one of gospel's most human figures, an artist who doesn't just sing about grace, but visibly leans on it. Within McClurkin's extended family are relatives who identify as gay, a reality that has both tested and deepened his understanding of love and acceptance. Over the years, he has spoken about his experiences with compassion and conviction, often reflecting on how faith and family can coexist even when belief and identity seem to clash. In public discussions, McClurkin has wrestled with how to reconcile his interpretation of Scripture with the lived realities of the people he loves. That tension between doctrine and devotion has made him a mirror for the broader conversation within the church, where so many families quietly navigate the same questions. Yet, what stands out about McClurkin's story is not the controversy, but the heart. Despite differing views, he has shown glimpses of tenderness and growth, moments when love eclipsed dogma. Those who have followed his journey closely recognize a man who, while imperfect, strives to embody mercy over judgment, whether through song or sermon. His message often circles back to restoration, the idea that no one is beyond the reach of grace, that family remains sacred even when it doesn't fit into neat theological boxes. 14. Yolanda Adams stands as one of gospel music's most radiant voices, a woman whose gift transcends genre, generation, and expectation. With her soaring soprano and effortless blend of gospel, soul, and jazz, she redefined what it meant to be a gospel artist in the modern age. Albums like Asterisk Mountain High, Valley Low Asterisk didn't just win Grammys. They reshaped the sound of faith-based music for a new era, bringing it into mainstream spaces without losing its spiritual fire. But beyond the accolades and performances, Adams' greatest strength has always been her authenticity. The way she carries grace both on and off stage, allowing her faith to evolve alongside her humanity. In her personal life, Yolanda's role as a mother has revealed another layer of that grace. Her daughter, Taylor Adams, identifies as bisexual, a truth that Yolanda has embraced with unwavering love and support. While some in the gospel community have struggled to reconcile queerness with faith, Adams has chosen a different path, one rooted in empathy and understanding. She's been vocal about her belief that God's love isn't selective, and that every person deserves to be celebrated for who they are. Through that conviction, she's offered a quiet but powerful model of what it means to parent with both conviction and compassion. Adams' allyship hasn't stayed confined to her home. She's used her influence to stand visibly beside the LGBTQ+ community, performing at inclusive events and lending her voice, literally and spiritually, to messages of unity. Her presence at pride gatherings and affirming concerts is a declaration that gospel's message of love cannot be contained by fear or prejudice. In a space where silence has often been safer, she's chosen song as her form of protest and affirmation, harmonizing faith with freedom. 15. Hezekiah Walker has long been known as one of gospel music's most influential voices, not only for his rousing hits and electrifying choirs, but for his heart for people. As the founder of the Love Fellowship Crusade Choir and the visionary behind classics like Every Praise and Sold Out, Walker brought a new level of energy and inclusivity to modern gospel. His music pulses with joy, built around the belief that worship should be accessible to everyone, the broken, the doubting, the celebrating, and the searching. It's that wide-open spirit that has made his ministry a sanctuary for countless believers who felt left out of traditional church spaces. At the center of that vision of love stands his family, including his son, Nathan Walker, who is openly gay and an active performer himself. In an industry and community where such realities often spark controversy, Hezekiah has chosen to lead with compassion rather than condemnation. His public reflections and ministry teachings often circle back to the idea that love, not judgment, is the foundation of the gospel. To him, family isn't about conformity but connection. Those close to the Walkers have described a home defined by laughter, mutual respect, and the freedom to be fully oneself. Nathan's visibility as both a singer and a proud gay man has quietly challenged stereotypes within gospel music, all while being embraced by a father who understands that love is the truest form of ministry. Walker's approach reflects the kind of faith that's lived, not preached. His sermons and songs carry an authenticity that mirrors his life, one that refuses to turn away from people in the name of religion. Instead, he's leaned into the hard conversations, using his platform to show that God's embrace doesn't narrow based on orientation or identity. Through his choir and his church, he's modeled a form of leadership that allows everyone to worship without shame or fear, and in doing so, he's quietly expanded the definition of what gospel community can look like.